Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode on the Roblox UI library tutorial series. In this episode, we're going to be continuing our scripting and adding additional functionality to our UI library. But before we do that, we're going to quickly fix some things, as I found a fatal flaw in the current system that we have. So I'm going to be showing you how to fix it so we can continue. And yeah, so as you can see here, we have the library tree table from the last episode. This was a good idea, but as it turns out, this is actually really bad, because imagine you're creating objects and they're all stored in a global table with the same name. Well, what happens? They get overwritten. They overwrite each other, and we don't want that. But thankfully, I found an easy fix for this, even though I thought I would have to redo this entire series. But basically, all you have to do is delete the library.tree variable, which we had right here. And you want to go down, and this is all going to be red now. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a variable called GUI and make it a table. And you're basically just going to change all of these. Now, to make this a little faster, we're just going to hit Control H on our keyboard, type in library.tree, and we're going to replace it with GUI and replace all occurrences. There you go. So now we can basically leave it as it is, and I'll show you what this does in a moment. We're going to be returning the GUI here as well, and we're returning a table now. So we want some methods in here, right? We want to be able to create tabs and have those working properly. So what we're going to do is do a function GUI create tab or something like that, and we're gonna have another options parameter here, and we're just gonna copy this and do the same thing we did earlier. I'm just gonna set a new default preview tab, and we're gonna have an icon. Now for the icon, I'm just gonna take the one from the UI, make sure it's enabled so I can see it, and just take the icon image. There we go. Now you might be wondering, why are we creating a table, and why are we returning it, and why are we putting this method inside the table? Well, simply because now we can do local tab is equal to main create tab, and we can add our options. We can have our name and our icon. So we're just going to be creating it by default to save time, and we're going to continue with the actual function of creating the tab. So what do we need for creating a tab? Well, we're going to need the tab button and all its components. We're going to have to parent it to this container, and we're going to need the frame that holds all of these controls. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to go back in here. Now notice we still have the library.tree in here. That's completely fine. We can just leave it, as we're going to be changing it later with the replace function anyways. So in here, we're going to copy everything that has to do with the navigation. So navigation, as long as it's saying navigation, except for these active and inactive, because those are the buttons. Yeah, so you want to copy all of this that creates the navigation, and actually you want to put it inside the navigation do block. I already did this because I actually recorded this video before, so just make sure you do that, because it's gonna create the navigation bar on the left. There will also be another thing that you have to copy, which is this right here, the line. It's gonna be like a little further down. You're just gonna have to look for it, or it could be in the same place as the navigation. It depends on your project. structure than what you did first. And since I created this line a little later, it appeared a little later in the script. So once you've done that, you actually won't be needing that anymore. So you're just gonna get rid of it. And now we're gonna proceed to the button part. So we're gonna be copying the inactive button, which is this right here. Just make sure you copy everything that has to do with it. As you can see, the line component that I mentioned earlier is actually right here for me, but since I already have it, I'll be deleting it. Okay, you'll also be needing the content container in the mainframe. I also have it in there because again I recorded this video twice. Just make sure to cut this out and put it inside mainframe because we're going to be needing it for holding the tabs. So now that we've copied the actual button, we're going to paste it in. Right away, we're going to create a new variable and call it tab right here as a table. And we're going to be returning tab right here. Now, all we have to do is press Ctrl H and replace all library.trees with tab. Boom. Just like that. Now, one thing you have to make sure you do, once it's parented, this will be parenting it inside of the navigation right here on the 11. So just make sure that you change this to GUI right here. Otherwise, it'll be parented wrong. So now all we have to do is change the text to options.name and the icon image to options.icon. And that's it. We've created our tab. Now we're going to test this quickly just to make sure everything is working up until this point. So we're going to be creating a tab. I'm going to create another just with some basic options, just like the name, just to know it's working. And we're going to hit play. And as you can see, guys, it is working nicely, perfectly fine. Very good. So now it is time to script the behavior of these buttons, such as hovering and stuff. So for that, we're going to be needing two states. Also, quick side note, which is actually very important, any variable that is important for the control, such as states or methods, you're going to want inside the tab table. So if you do a method, you're going to make sure you do tab and then the method, because we're going to be accessing this from other elements and it's important you do that. So inside of tab, we're going to have two states. We're going to have hover false and we're going to have active false. Now these are going to be helping us with the button press, with our own like pressing mechanic and hover mechanic. So we're going to be needing these, and then we're going to go down here and we're going to start adding functionality. So the first thing we're going to do is take the main text label, which just covers the entire button basically. We're going to add an event listener for mouse enter. And now what is this going to do? Well, it's just going to set tab.hover equals true. And we're going to copy this and we're going to set it to false on mouse leave. And now we're going to add another event listener for user input service on input began. Make sure you add the service. We're going to have input and game processed event. We're going to do if game processed event, then return end. What this does, it ignores Roblox's like core events for game input such as chat, and we just don't want those, so you're just gonna write this down to ignore those. Okay, moving on, we're gonna be checking if input the user input type is equal to enum.user input type.mouse button 1. So obviously we're checking if the user has pressed the mouse button 1. If he has, we're gonna basically just put tab.active is equal to true. And yeah, now we're gonna be adding some hover effects like changing text color. Yeah, so for the mouse enter effect, we're gonna be fading the label and icon color to white. So before we do that, I'm gonna show you this tween method. I'm gonna leave it in the description so you can just copy paste it. But I'll also explain it right now since we are not kids and we actually want to understand what we're doing. So we have 3 parameters: object, goal, and callback. So first we create a tween with the object and the tween info that we defined up here and the goal. So far so good, it's just a simple tween. And then we have a dot completed event connection where we call the callback if one is given, or do just function and an empty function. What is a callback? It's just what's going to happen when the tween finishes. And then obviously we're just playing the tween. So this is just like a small little shorthand for us to make development easier. So we're gonna do library tween, and we're gonna be tweening tab 17, which is the text label. The goal is going to be text color 3 is equal to color 3 dot from RGB white, and there won't be any callback for this. So we will also be tweening the icon, so we're just going to copy paste this and put it on 19 and put image color 3. Now for the hover, like for the ending hover effect, we're going to put this away and we're just going to revert it back to the old colors. Now if you had a theming system, you would actually be handling the themes right here by using a configuration or something, but I won't be doing that in this series, maybe in a future one. So yeah. Now one last thing before we move on, we're gonna be checking, before we do any changes, we're gonna be checking if tab.active is equal to true, because if we don't, imagine you hover over this active button, you don't want anything to happen because it's active. So we're going to be making sure that doesn't happen, okay? So we're going to disable this and try and test it out. Okay, so as you can see, hover off doesn't work right now. And we need to find out why, because I didn't get any errors. Okay, so clearly I am blind and I didn't put the old the other style, so let's just do that real quick. And I have done something wrong again. Okay, I'm sorry guys. We're gonna be checking if the tab is not active. So as you can see, the hovering is working, and if we hit a key, it sets it to active. Now I actually forgot one more thing, and right here where we're setting it active, we have to make sure that the tab is actually being hovered over, right? Because if we just press the mouse button 1 anywhere, it's gonna be active. So this is basically our handler. Now we're gonna have to connect this and like hook it up to other tabs to make sure it works, and we're gonna do that right now. Okay, so what we're going to do under these handlers is we're going to write a function called tab activate and another function called tab deactivate. Now in here we're going to set tab.active is equal to true, and then we're actually going to be needing to access the other tabs. Now how do we do that? Well, we just go in here and we have this GUI thing, right? So we're going to add a key inside GUI and we're gonna call it current tab is equal to nil because we don't have a tab right now. Now in here, we're going to see if GUI.currentTab is equal to nil, then we're going to set the GUI.currentTab to our tab. Now, what this is going to do, if you create a tab for the first time, it's going to be set as like the main or like the first actual tab. So now we can actually access the current tab by doing this. So inside activate, we want to get the current tab and we want to check if tab.active is false, because we don't want to like reactivate it even though it's already active. So then we're setting it to true, making sure it's active, and then on the current tab we're going to set active to false. And we don't actually need to do this simply because we're going to do UI.currentTab deactivate. Now, what is this going to do? Well, it's going to call this method, and this method is going to have if tab.active, then tab.active equals false. And we're gonna basically just be reverting all of this. So tab.hover equals false, and then we're just gonna be reverting all the default properties. Also gonna be tweening the background transparency to 1 because that's the default transparency, and inside of activate we are going to be tweening it to 0.8, and we're going to be setting these colors to a nice bright white. And finally, we're going to be setting the current tab to this tab. And yeah, that's basically that. We're going to be testing it out right now. So we've got no errors. We can still like move. We're going to press a tab and something went wrong. So right here, we're going to check instantly. So is 17 the right one? Yes. Background transparency is okay. So we should actually activate this tab. So we're actually going to be moving this all the way down here after we declare everything. And we're just going to be doing GUI tab activate. Now in here, we're going to be packing this into if GUI.currentTab is not equal to nil. So we're just deactivating the current tab if there is one. And then we're doing all of this and setting the current tab to this tab. So that should be it. Okay, so something went wrong again, but as you can see, this tab is active. So let us check in here. Okay, so I didn't activate the tab right here, so make sure you don't forget this. And we're also going to be having to move the functionality below the methods as well, because that's how Lua works. So we're just actually going to add a comment over here, and we're going to call it logic, and we're going to take all of these and just pack them into a do block just so this stays neat. And these are the methods, just like that, methods, and this is going to be render, fancy word. So now this should be working. So as you can see, it is working perfectly. The last thing we're going to be doing before I call this episode a day, because as you can see, it's pretty late, and also I have 2 exams tomorrow, is we're going to be making the container actually visible. So in here, inside the methods, all we have to do is set the tab 17. Oh, so as you can see, I actually forgot something, and that is the actual tab itself, like the container. So it's actually right here. Just gonna copy it, and bada bing, bada boom, it's right there. Change library.tree to tab, boom. So this is 1C, and we're actually gonna make sure that this is invisible. So visible is false. There we go. So let's just hide this. Remember 1C, so 1C dot visible is equal to true, and on the deactivate it's equal to false. That's basically our tab class done. I wouldn't call this a class because there's no object oriented programming here, but I'll just call it class for the sake of this tutorial. And yeah, so that was the 5th episode of scripting. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments or join my Discord server, link in the description. And yeah, I will see you guys next time.